The tremor of war, though distant, sent ripples across the Atlantic. America wrestled with its conscience. Between 1939 and 1941, the United States found itself in a fierce internal debate. This was a stark contrast to the growing dread in Europe. Voices like Charles Lindbergh's resonated with a powerful isolationist sentiment. They argued that America should remain aloof from the continent's endless conflicts. They believed America should safeguard its own shores. President Franklin D. Roosevelt charted a more interventionist course. Yet, he navigated a complex political landscape. He was acutely aware of a populace still scarred by the Great War. This populace remained wary of foreign entanglements. While Europe spiraled towards catastrophe, America debated. Its gaze turned inward. Was it momentarily blind to the storm gathering strength across the ocean? In France, the storm was already breaking. Hitler's audacious march into the Rhineland in 1936 had been met not with force, but with paralysis. This was a telling display of military inaction from both Britain and France. This capitulation emboldened Germany. It laid bare the profound strategic stagnation within the French military. They were still clinging to the defensive doctrines of the First World War. For Marie-Madeleine Fourcade, this national complacency was a bitter pill. She was a woman of audacious spirit, born in cosmopolitan Shanghai. Her childhood on the vibrant waterfront, amid the cacophony of a dozen languages, had instilled in her a desire for excitement. It instilled a freedom that defied the restrictive Parisian notions of female behavior. Now, she was trapped in an unhappy marriage. She was stifled by her husband's conservative views. She watched her beloved country drift towards disaster. Her personal disillusionment mirrored the nation's broader malaise. It was against this backdrop that she encountered Major Georges Loustourneau-Lacour. He was a man described as a hot-blooded prince and master intriguer. Recognizing Fourcade's keen mind and independent spirit, Navarre, as he was known, urgently sought her assistance. He needed help in his nascent intelligence-gathering efforts. These efforts aimed at exposing Germany's dangerous military build-up. "You seemed interested in what I said yesterday," he pressed. "I want to tell you more, and I want to ask you to help me in a task that I cannot do alone." Her first mission was not a gentle introduction to clandestine work. It was a plunge into its perilous depths. One crisp morning, Marie-Madeleine drove her Citroën towards Brussels. The low hum of the engine was a counterpoint to her racing heart. The streets of the Belgian capital, though seemingly unremarkable, bristled with an unspoken tension. Her contact, a nervous figure, met her in a discreet café. The clinking of coffee cups and hushed conversations formed a fragile shield. Inside a heavy, leather-bound briefcase lay the prize. These were secret German dossiers. Their contents were a damning indictment of Hitler's ambitions. The weight of the case in her hands felt immense. This was not just for the papers it contained. It was for the moral gravity of the act itself. Each glance over her shoulder, each muted sound, heightened the sense of danger. But as she drove away, the stolen intelligence secured, a profound shift occurred within her. The thrill of the risk, the quiet defiance of her actions, solidified her commitment. This was more than a mission. It was a calling. It was a validation of her audacious nature. It was a path beyond the restrictive ideas about how women of her class should behave. Despite Navarre's accurate and urgent intelligence reports, including early warnings of Hitler's plans for an Ardennes invasion, the French military leadership remained stubbornly complacent. Their warnings were dismissed, their pleas were ignored. In 1937, Navarre was cashiered from the Deuxième Bureau. This was a bitter testament to the strategic short-sightedness that gripped France. But 2 years later, in September 1939, the true gravity of their foresight became undeniable. Hitler invaded Poland. This forced Britain and France to declare war. The catastrophic failure of French strategic foresight was laid bare. The urgent intelligence work that Marie-Madeleine and Navarre had undertaken was tragically validated. In a male-dominated world, women of her social standing were expected to remain confined to domesticity. But Marie-Madeleine Fourcade had already stepped onto a different stage. Her ambition and capability were now poised to meet the gathering storm head-on. The armistice, delivered by Marshal Pétain, had plunged France into a profound crisis. It fractured the nation's spirit. Many citizens, exhausted by the swift, brutal defeat, clung to it as a promise of peace. Yet figures like Marie-Madeleine Fourcade saw only a devastating loss of national soul. This fractured psyche was further exacerbated by the division of France. It was split into an occupied north and a free zone. This zone was governed by the authoritarian collaborationist Vichy regime. Amidst this moral vacuum, the urgent necessity of internal resistance began to coalesce. It was driven by those who refused to accept defeat. Yet, the path to resistance was fraught with moral ambiguities. None were more stark than the British attack on the French fleet at Mers el-Kabir. The raw, visceral anger ran deep. Over 1,000 French sailors died. They were caught in the crossfire of a former ally's desperate strategic move. This act was intended to prevent the fleet's capture by Germany. Instead, it fueled a profound resentment towards Britain. This complicated the nascent efforts of resistance networks like Navarre and Fourcade's crusade. They struggled to recruit within a populace already reeling from perceived betrayal. Lieutenant Jean Boutron, a survivor of that bloody day, articulated the widespread outrage. He declared, "This bloody armistice, we haven't finished paying for it. It's only just beginning." His words echoed the bitter sentiment. It made unifying the French against a common enemy an immense challenge. They were often fighting against each other instead. Marshal Peytin's subsequent meeting with Hitler at Montoire in December 1940 solidified Vichy's collaborationist policy. It crushed any lingering hope that the Marshal was playing a clever double game. For many, this definitive shift was a moment of profound disillusionment. Henry Frenay, a Deuxième Bureau officer, captured the sentiment. "All the hopes which the Marshal had once aroused in me had now all but vanished," he stated. This shattered illusion, however, served as a powerful catalyst. It galvanized dissent into active, desperate resistance. It was in this treacherous climate that Marie-Madeleine Fourcade became instrumental. Driven by a profound sense of moral obligation, she threw her formidable energy into expanding Navarre's nascent network. She moved with purpose. She tirelessly recruited key personnel. She laid the foundational structure for the crusade, which would soon become Alliance. Her efforts were vital. They transformed a small group of determined individuals into a growing, intricate web of intelligence. Meanwhile, across the Channel, Britain found itself in a dire situation. Ravaged by the Battle of Britain and facing a terrifying U-boat menace, the need for intelligence from occupied France was urgent. The U-boat threat choked its vital supply lines. Yet MI6 was ill-equipped to provide this intelligence. The agency, underfunded and understaffed, desperately needed to penetrate the fog of German activities. This mutual desperation forged an unlikely alliance. Commander Kenneth Cohen, an astute and sensitive MI6 officer, recognized the potential in Navarre's network. In April 1941, Cohen's strategic recruitment of Navarre and his organization marked the official inception of a crucial intelligence partnership. The crusade was rechristened Alliance. This signified its new vital connection to MI6. It became London's answer to its prayers. This was not a resistance born of established structures or clear directives. It was one that had to be invented from the ground up. The challenges were immense. The populace was often indifferent or hostile. The Vichy regime ruthlessly suppressed dissent. And the pervasive shadow of the Gestapo loomed. Yet, the story of Alliance and its growing ties to British intelligence challenged the myth of a monolithic Vichy regime. It revealed instead a France deeply divided. Internal opposition, fueled by individuals like Navarre and Fourcade, rose with immense personal courage. They built an underground movement from scratch. It was a perilous territory without maps. In the crucible of July 1941, Marie-Madeleine Fourcade, a woman of formidable will, assumed command of the Alliance network. It was a mantle heavy with personal fear. It was the daunting reality of leading untrained agents against the ruthlessly efficient German counterintelligence. Her own existence was a study in austerity. Ration cards, threadbare clothing, and the constant gnaw of hunger defined her life. This was a stark contrast to the continued opulence of Parisian collaborators. Their lavish costume balls and black market feasts with German officers only fueled her fierce resolve. The network's very survival hung by a thread. This was especially true after her mentor, Navarre, departed for Algeria to support a risky coup. His subsequent arrest, dramatic escape, and then rearrest, betrayed by a trusted friend, was a profound blow. It threatened to shatter alliance. Yet Fourcade, despite her deep emotional distress, rallied her forces. "Enough, little one," a comrade had told her. "A soldier doesn't cry." She dried her tears. She asserted her natural authority. She cemented her role as La Patronne, the indispensable leader. MI6, however, remained skeptical. They knew Fourcade only as POZ 55, a deliberately gender-neutral code. It was in Madrid that Fourcade finally revealed her true identity to Major Richards. This was amidst the sad, tattered version of a city still scarred by its own civil war. Major Richards was known as Eddie Keyser, her MI6 liaison. His dumbfounded expression upon realizing POG 55 was a woman underscored the prevailing male-dominated and skeptical attitude within British intelligence. Figures like Claude Dancy held firm to principles that often dismissed female leadership. Fourcade, who had defied society's rules her entire life, now confronted the full extent of the network's compromise and betrayal. This included the treachery of her former chief of staff Gavani. She knew she had to fight not only the Gestapo. She also had to fight the ingrained biases of her own allies. She had to prove a woman could effectively lead a major intelligence organization. Fourcade's strategic acumen, a blend of audacity and shrewd calculation, allowed Alliance to regroup and expand. She even feigned cooperation with Henry Rollin, Vichy's chief of political counterintelligence. She endured his campaign of seduction to protect her operatives and buy precious time. This morally ambiguous dance was a testament to the complex realities of resistance work. The German occupation of the Free Zone in November 1942, triggered by the Allied landing in North Africa, intensified the danger. It transformed France into a tinderbox. Yet, it also spurred the establishment of the crucial Lysander air operation. Lizzies were flown by young pilots like squadron leader Hugh Verity. This became a vital lifeline for intelligence transfer and personnel extraction. Alliance played a pivotal, if fraught, role in the perilous extraction of General Giraud from Vichy, France. This was a complex operation. It was plagued by Giraud's shifting demands and the eventual capture of key Alliance personnel. This included Fourcade herself. Despite these immense setbacks, the intelligence gathered by Alliance agents remained invaluable. Their meticulous reports on German U-boat operations, particularly from heavily fortified bases like Lorient, directly contributed to Allied successes in the Battle of the Atlantic. This included the sinking of submarines and the daring Operation Frankton. Lorient, the largest submarine base in the world, had 15 feet thick concrete walls. It presented a seemingly impenetrable defense. Yet its commander, Admiral Karl Donitz, fostered an environment of hard partying and indiscretion among his royalty submariners. It was this lax security, coupled with the inherent hostility of the Breton population, that Alliance exploited. The most significant intelligence coup came through Jacques Stoskopf. He was a brilliant naval engineer working directly at Lorient, publicly perceived as the most hated Frenchman in Brittany for his apparent collaboration. Stoskopf was secretly providing a comprehensive treasure trove of information. This included details on the base, its U-boat strength, and operational readiness. His seemingly small yet continuous acts of human intelligence proved the effectiveness of infiltration against even the most formidable defences. It turned German hubris into Allied advantage. These seemingly small acts of intelligence, often from unexpected sources, played a crucial role. They delayed the deployment of Germany's advanced V-1 and V-2 weapons. They altered the course of the war. Jeannie Rousseau, codenamed Amniarix, was a linguist and interpreter. She possessed a photographic memory. She had an uncanny ability to extract details from German officers she encountered at the Majestic Hotel in Paris. Describing herself as part of the equipment, a piece of furniture, she skillfully teased them, taunted them. She feigned disbelief at their claims of astounding new weapons. Her subtle prompting, "What they did not say, I prompted," led them to reveal drawings of a huge rocket and a map of Peenemünde, this masterpiece in the history of intelligence gathering. A detailed report on the stratospheric bomb reached British intelligence. Dr. Reginald V. Jones, Assistant Director of Scientific Intelligence, validated its critical importance. Acting on this intelligence, Winston Churchill authorized the decisive RAF raid on Peenemünde on August 17, 1943. The devastating attack, which von Braun later described as like hell, significantly set back German rocket development. It delayed the deployment of the V-1 and V-2 by months, as General Dwight D. Eisenhower himself firmly believed. If the Germans had perfected these new superweapons 6 months earlier, the invasion of Europe would have encountered enormous difficulties. In certain circumstances, he believed it would not have been possible. The vital intelligence gathered by individuals like Rousseau, validated by experts and acted upon by strategic bombing, unequivocally debunked a myth. The V-1 and V-2 were not an unstoppable German advantage. It showcased how human intelligence and strategic action could neutralize such existential threats. The Gestapo's hammer fell with brutal, systematic precision. September 1943 became a month etched in blood and betrayal for alliance. It was a turning point that threatened to extinguish the network entirely. The ambush and arrest of Léon Fay and Ferdinand Rodriguez on a train outside Paris was a moment of chilling efficiency. It was merely the tip of a devastating iceberg. It was the culmination of a systematic offensive by SS counterintelligence. They meticulously exploited internal betrayals, most notably Jean-Paul Lien's collaboration, for which he was handsomely rewarded. The arrests triggered a catastrophic wave. They decimated alliance operations across France. They swept through dozens of resistance groups like a giant scythe. A primary weapon in the Gestapo's arsenal was the SD's chillingly effective radio game. This was a sophisticated deception operation masterminded by Joseph Kiefer. This insidious technique not only fed false intelligence to Allied networks, it also provided the Germans with real-time information on agent arrivals and equipment. This planted seeds of distrust that poisoned the very wellspring of clandestine communication. For the Special Operations Executive, this led to the destruction of trust in many transmissions. It cost countless lives. It ultimately sealed the fate of agents like Noor Inayat Khan. The Gestapo, with its ruthlessly efficient SS counterintelligence operation dubbed Alliance II, systematically targeted key leaders and operatives. It left a trail of silent radio sets and vanished comrades. In London, Marie-Madeleine Fourcade, Alliance's leader, experienced this decimation with profound personal despair. The silence from the field was a torment. Each missing transmission was a fresh wound. She was plagued by chronic insomnia. Her body often shook with suppressed sobs. She gulped liquid sedatives to ward off the encroaching madness. The network's communication and operational capabilities were in near-total collapse. Only a handful of transmitters were still active. The vital air link to Britain was severed. She saw a pinched, haggard face in her mirror. It was a constant reminder of the immense burden. "I'm going mad," she confessed. "I have no right to go mad." The emotional toll of commanding a network under siege was immense. Knowing that every captured agent meant untold suffering left her feeling as though she had wielded the executioner's axe. This systematic dismantling of Alliance was further complicated. It was even enabled by the fragmented and often self-serving landscape of Allied intelligence. Far from a unified front, London was a hotbed of internal feuds and political rivalries. André Duhavrin, the icy young chief of the Free French BCRA, actively withheld information. He launched attacks on Alliance. MI6 at times shared Alliance intelligence with rival services. The full-scale and dangerous brawls between MI6 and SOE were so venomous that they were more abhorrent to one another than the Germans. Claude Dancy, MI6's formidable deputy head, was known for his viciously petty vendettas. He even gloated over the destruction of SOE networks. He referred to Fourcade as Cohen's bitch. These cumbersome cliques and criminally childish antagonisms created an indifference. This resulted in an unexpected and disappointing attitude from London. It left Alliance vulnerable and unsupported. French Gaullists, fearing a new defiant force in France, viewed Alliance as a rival. It was to be carefully watched and strictly controlled. This further hampered effective support. But even amidst this wholesale pillaging and the wealth of suffering each report represented, a turning point emerged. Kenneth Cohen, MI6's new head of operations in France, proved to be Alliance's unexpected saviour. Unlike many of his colleagues, Cohen was warm, sensitive, and possessed a keen understanding of the resistance's value. He recognized Alliance's indispensable role for the impending D-Day invasion. He immediately prioritized re-establishing vital links. His personal intervention was crucial. The first step in this restoration was Operation Popeye in January 1944. This was a daring naval torpedo boat mission to retrieve over 90 pounds of vital mail from the Côte d'Azur. They risked everything for the backlog of intelligence. This was followed by the successful Lysander operation in March 1944. It restored the crucial air link between France and Britain after a 6-month hiatus. This flight retrieved the injured pilot and Normandy sector chief Jean Santony. It delivered not just personnel but a much-needed boost to morale and operational capacity. It was a fragile lifeline re-established. The urgency of these efforts was underscored by the intelligence being gathered on the ground. Robert Douin, a sculptor and artist leading Alliance's Normandy subsector, worked tirelessly with his 14-year-old son Remy. He created what would be hailed as the most complete, detailed military picture of the landing sites received by Allied command. This was a painstaking 55-foot-long map of German fortifications along the Atlantic Wall. This masterpiece of intelligence was flown to London by Santony on that crucial March flight. It was an invaluable contribution to D-Day planning. Tragically, on the very day Santony carried the map to London, Darwin and his group were rounded up by the Gestapo. They paid the ultimate price for their vital work. A path forward for Fourcade, and a solution to the internal feuds, came with the integration of Alliance into the Free French BCRA. This offered Fourcade renewed operational autonomy. Crucially, it offered a path to return to France. Her return was fraught with extreme personal danger. It was a testament to the unromanticized reality of espionage. On July 5th, with only 2 hours' notice, Marie-Madeleine Fourcade departed from Tempsford Base. She was not a passenger on a comfortable flight. She sat on luggage in a Hudson Light bomber. Her MI6 liaison officer Raymond Pezet posed as her husband. In her hold-all bag, she carried transmitter crystals, codes, money, and a dental prosthetic. It was designed to alter her appearance, but most significant were the cyanide pills, disguised as aspirin. They were a last resort against torture. A priest had offered absolution. He assured her that death by cyanide would be a necessary means of resisting the enemy, not suicide. As the plane rumbled down the runway, passing lines of bombers heading for Germany, Fourcade felt the weight of her mission. She felt the chilling fear of capture. She felt the profound responsibility for her network's survival. The plane landed in a brightly lit field in southeast France. This region was secured by Helen Desinards. Fourcade, instantly on edge, felt a cold knot of unease. A young reception leader recognized her. This confirmed her fears about BCRA security. The journey to Aix-en-Provence was an exhausting 3-day hegira. It was across a dark, lifeless tinderbox France. It was a relentless grind of walking, riding in carts and trucks. She endured packed, slow-moving trains and random inspections by German patrols. Her return was immediately met with the Gestapo's brutal reality. The morning after her arrival in Aix-en-Provence, a loud crescendo of German voices filled the stairwell of her apartment house. Gun-waving Gestapo agents in grey-green uniforms rushed in. They pushed Fourcade, disguised as Germaine Pezet, against the wall. The raid initially targeted Marquis. It escalated with the discovery of intelligence reports hidden in upholstered furniture. Fourcade was arrested and taken to a punishment cell in an army barracks. It was a small, bare space that reeked of urine, sweat, and tobacco. Consumed by mortal fear of torture, she made an irreversible decision. Around 3 a.m. during the guard change, she miraculously squeezed through a narrow window opening. She dropped to the ground with a soft thud. Scuttling on her knees like a crab, bleeding from shredded feet, she found refuge in a cemetery crypt. Her face bruised and blooded, she bathed in a trickling creek to wash off her scent. Then she limped back through the town, past the barracks coot. Barking dogs and sirens signaled her escape. She found the Desinards farmhouse untouched. She burst in, proclaiming, "I've just escaped. I've saved your lives," she added, before collapsing, utterly overcome. Her dramatic escape, a testament to her exceptional bravery and resourcefulness, underscored the harsh, unromanticized view of espionage. This was not a world of glamour. It was one of meticulous, dangerous, and often lonely work. It involved maintaining communication networks under extreme duress, and it involved an immense physical toll. The physical toll was immense, from Fourcade's lacerated feet and chronic insomnia to the psychological strain of constant fear and loss. The Gestapo's hammer might have fallen, but Marie-Madeleine Fourcade, the hedgehog, had once again defied it. She emerged from the jaws of capture to lead her surviving network into the dawn of liberation. As Allied forces broke through the Normandy defences in the scorching summer of 1944, a new kind of urgency gripped France. The liberation was not just a military campaign. It was a race against time. It was fueled by intelligence and the desperate hope of a nation. Alliance, Marie-Madeleine Fourcade's sprawling network, proved indispensable. Its agents now operated with renewed purpose. Their eyes were fixed on the retreating German lines. From its mucky strongholds, the network supplied vital weapons and gear to resistance groups. It transformed pockets of local fighters into effective units. These units were capable of disrupting German movements. This support was critical. It enabled the Maquis to harass retreating columns, sabotage supply routes, and provide crucial tactical information to advancing Allied armies. Fourcade, ever the pragmatist, navigated the treacherous currents of internal French politics. The rise of communist resistance factions added another layer of complexity. These divisions, often simmering beneath the surface, created a fierce impetus for Allied liberation. Each group vied for influence in the coming peace. For Fourcade, the objective remained singular. It was to drive out the Germans regardless of the ideological leanings of her allies or adversaries. A defining moment in this final push came with Jean Santony's daring motorcycle journey in mid-August. Sought by MI6, Santony, Alliance's Normandy chief, undertook a perilous ride to Le Mans with operative Bernard de Billy. His saddlebags bulged with vital material. A critical intelligence report was tucked securely into his trousers. This document, a snapshot of German movements and defences, was delivered directly to General George Patton's Third Army headquarters. It provided the American forces with invaluable real-time intelligence. Santony, narrowly escaping German sentries on a second journey, demonstrated the direct, tangible impact of alliance on Allied military decisions. It guided Patton's forces as they swept across France. This constant flow of intelligence guided Allied offensives. From Neil's reconnaissance missions across the Moselle to the detailed reports on German unit movements, it helped thwart German attacks. And it ultimately sped the liberation of eastern France, saving thousands of Allied lives. But as the war neared its end, the survival of captured Allied agents became a desperate gamble. Ferdinand Rodriguez, Leon Fay, and hundreds of other alliance members were condemned to death by the Reich's highest military court. They found themselves pawns in a grim geopolitical game. Germany, facing inevitable defeat, began to view these prisoners not as enemies to be executed. They were seen as bargaining chips for a future peace. Rodriguez, a skeletal figure at 116 pounds, experienced a surreal liberation. He was transferred from the hellish Sonnenberg fortress. He was exchanged for a German agent in Switzerland. The simple sensation of the chill wind on his face, the antithesis of life in a prison cell, made him drunk with happiness, but his physical freedom could not erase the profound psychological and emotional scars of his captivity. Leon Fay, however, did not share Rodriguez's fate. Despite Berlin radio announcing his survival and offering him for exchange, Charles de Gaulle's French government refused to negotiate. Prioritizing national justice over a single life, they would not exchange a convicted collaborator for Fay. This political decision, stark and unforgiving, sealed his fate. He was executed at Sonnenberg prison in January 1945. He left behind a will expressing his hope for France's peace and happiness. The systematic execution of hundreds of alliance agents in late 1944 was ordered by Berlin. It was to prevent their rescue as Allied forces advanced. This underscored the immense sacrifices and brutal realities faced by the resistance. Victory, Fourcade reflected, was a meaningless word. So many who had won it were still missing. The end of the war was not a clean triumph. It was a landscape of profound loss. It forced survivors like Rodriguez to grapple with the ghosts of their comrades. Marie-Madeleine Fourcade embarked on the arduous, heartbreaking search for the missing. She tirelessly worked to honor the fallen and piece together the fates of her poor dead. Marie-Madeleine Fourcade's pivotal leadership of Alliance, the largest and most important Allied intelligence network in France, was largely unrecognized. This was in the immediate post-war period. The political landscape of a newly liberated France, dominated by Gaullists and communists, had little room for figures like Fourcade. Her network had operated independently. It often had pre-war right-wing or Vichy ties. This ill-natured rivalry and pervasive gender bias airbrushed out of the picture many from official honours. This was especially true for women. De Gaulle's prestigious Compagnons de la Libération, for instance, included only 6 women. This was out of over 1,000 recipients. It was a stark testament to the prevailing sexism. Fourcade's story challenged the deeply ingrained idea that only men played significant leadership roles in the resistance. It debunked the notion that individuals with complex pre-war allegiances could not be legitimate resistors. Fourcade, whom David Schonbrun described as having gone from the bête noire of the Nazis to the terror of French bureaucrats, dedicated herself to storming the corridors and offices of the ministries of Paris. She sought to secure recognition and aid for her agents and their families. She poured her own funds into projects. One was a summer camp for agents' children. This fostered an extraordinary esprit de corps that bound her tight-knit clan for life. Her memoir, L'Arche de Noé, served as her testament. It was a hope that the divine flame that burned in their hearts would be understood. It was a hope that it would not be forgotten. When Marie-Madeleine Fourcade died in 1989, she received a funeral at Les Invalides. It was a belated but fitting recognition. Her enduring legacy, celebrated through memorials and commemorations, ensures that the courage, ingenuity, and sacrifices of Alliance and its unsung heroines are not forgotten. It redefines resistance as a state of mind. It is a profound testament to the human spirit's unwavering commitment to freedom, forged in the crucible of war, and forever etched into the fabric of history.